tolerate this and you'll be next.
Save London Motorcycle made a bold move to actually take this to court.
Their barrister has advised and got a reasonably good chance of winning, because you can't just sweep people under the carpet and say, well, it's not our problem.
Hello again, everybody. I'm talking today to Ben from Hackney. We're talking about an ongoing saga that is the motorcycle parking charges in Hackney. It's a bit of a David and Goliath story, a seriously long saga. But before we start, let's get Ben to actually introduce himself. So, Ben, can you tell us who you are, what bike you ride, why you're interested in all this stuff?
Hello, Colin. So, I've been a MAG member for about 30 odd years. I used to work as a motorbike courier in London and used to read the various magazines, and I was aware of MAG through that. And I was aware of all the battles that MAG were fighting over the years, whether it be leg protectors or daylight headlights and all the rest of it. And I quite like reading the magazine, God forbid, as well. So I'm also a Hackney resident, and I've tried to liaise with Hackney Council about a lot of things over the years. I've lived in Hackney for 30 years too, and tried to feed back my opinions on all sorts of things. And I must say, I don't really feel that any of it makes any difference at all. I do feel as though a lot of the decisions have been made before the consultation is done, and then the consultation goes in the bin and they do what they wanted to do. I could give you lots of examples, but it's a perfect example we're talking about here is parking charges for motorbikes. And I've ridden a motorbike since I was 16, so I feel qualified to talk about that.
Obviously, the specific subject that we're talking about here is these parking charges. When did you first become aware of it? Because, I mean, obviously this is a bit of a saga. It has been going on for a few years now. When did you first become aware of the issue, shall we say?
That's a very good question, because I didn't hear about it at all until, I'm going to say, late 22 or early 2023, which is shocking when you realise that they started all of this back in 2020, and it really wouldn't be terribly difficult to either get a list of registered bikers who've got a bike in the borough from DVLA, or write to every resident, or even people with a car, because I have a car too. So I didn't hear about it until I got something put on my seat by Save London Motorcycling, telling me what was going on and giving us a point of contact, which was really helpful, because you can't fight this stuff on your own. You need people who can help.
From your understanding, I mean, obviously many of our viewers are not local to Hackney. Can you give us a brief rundown? I mean, it does seem, like you say, that there's an element of consultation by stealth going on, but just now that obviously you're fully up to speed with what has been going on, could you just give us a bit of a rundown so that our viewers can understand just how this has gone in the past?
I can try. I was speaking just before we started recording and saying how complicated this stuff is, and how grateful I am to people like MAG and Save London Motorcycling, that when you look through the notes on what's been done, I'm not the poor geezer or girl who's had to do it, because it's horrific, you know. As far as I'm aware, Hackney Council have been consulting since about 2020 on introducing parking charges for motorbikes, and at that time they got 4,000 odd responses, which is huge, considering that as a biker in Hackney I hadn't even heard of it, so obviously it's an emotive subject. Nonetheless, about 4 out of 5 of the people who responded to the consultation said, no, you shouldn't do it. Obviously I would agree with that. 4/5 of the people objected to it, but in 2021 the council decided it was great and good to go, and it would be priced up to a couple of £100 for residents, and also that no one would be able to commute by motorcycle, because you'd only be able to buy a finite number of hours of parking. Save London Motorcycling became aware of this in, I think, 2022, so they thankfully contacted the council to highlight the errors, asking for more details and pointing out that the policy would need to be reconsidered, because it was based on a completely false understanding of how motorbikes works and motorbike impacts. What it is for Hackney Council, and I think most urban, or national road planners, is that cars and motorbikes are the same thing, but they're just not. And Save London Motorcycling made that loud and clear, I think, and I think MAG do a good job of saying the same thing at a more national and European level. So they didn't roll out the plan as intended. They had a more general review, and that's when Save London Motorcycling got involved to create a sort of group to object to it, which is when I heard about those guys. So there was an 8,000 strong petition presented to Hackney Council in October 22. So they came up with in 2023 revised plans. The only real change was that there wouldn't be a limit for commuters, so you could pay £1 an hour to commute. So that's, if you're working a 10-hour day, that's £10 a day to park your motorbike, comparable with cars, and everything else remained the same. It's a good concession, but given that how bad things were in the first instance, Save London Motorcycling felt that they really had to do more work.
Yes, it's a little bit sad when you have to celebrate about a success is that we've prevented them from banning motorcycle commuting in Hackney. We're talking about parking charges, and a good result is that they haven't actually banned motorcycles from commuting into Hackney. It's not a very high bar that we've set ourselves, is it?
Well, it's not. I sometimes have to go out to Kent in the morning, and when I see the people queuing up on the south side of the Blackwall Tunnel, I mean, it's a 4 or 5 mile stationary traffic jam of cars, and I mean, for goodness sake, if you're going to commute, a motorbike is just the obvious answer, for me at least, and I'm sure a lot of those people, I mean, I'm sure when it's raining they have a little laugh, but most of the time you can't help but think if people were just using motorbikes, that traffic jam wouldn't be there. So as a commuter, the motorbike is the perfect tool as far as I'm concerned. That's what I've used for.
And from your perspective, obviously as a Hackney resident and a motorcyclist, you have been used to obviously parking your motorcycle for free. What do you think is going to be the sort of like the total impact that you're going to have now in terms of cost with these charges?
I mean, it is a lot of money. Currently I'm only riding a 125cc scooter, which my Triumph 675 got stolen. It was the wife's scooter, so I hijacked that because she wasn't using it. And I keep waiting for it to break down or get stolen or something, because I'd really like to buy myself a Super Sport 600 again, but I can't bring myself to get rid of the Vespa because it's so perfect for London. So even I am going to have to pay, I'm not quite sure, I think 100 or 2, but my 600cc mid-weight bike would be more like 300 or 400, and the Hackney parking charges, they go up to about 600 quid for what you might call a normal bike. I mean, that's the bigger end of the scale, like the bigger Triumphs. They do have a category for 2-litre diesels, which goes up to about £800, but I've not actually seen any of those on London's roads.
Yeah, so the old diesel motorcycles, which we know are so prevalent in London.
But to answer your question, actually, the flip side is I'm not able to park my motorbike in other places in Hackney. I can only park it outside my house. So it's not like it's a Hackney-wide borough. If you go to Westminster, it's £1 a day to park as a commuter, even cheaper for a resident, and you can park anywhere. You can go to the shops in one part of town and then go to a different part of Westminster, park on all the bays of the same code, which seems sensible because at the end of the day motorbikes are all about mobility, and that's what people are using them for. So it's up to £600, but you can only park in one particular spot. And I didn't, even though I attended the meeting to protest against the parking policy, I didn't know they'd implemented it. I only saw my friend taking his motorbike away and going, "Oh, are you off somewhere?" He said, "Oh, the motorbike charges come in next week." I said, "But I didn't know that. I'm a biker, I live in Hackney, blah, blah, blah. where did you find out? And he said, oh, apparently it's on the council website, someone tipped me off. And apparently also there were boards put up in motorbike bays, which there aren't many in Hackney, but there are a few. Obviously I don't use them because I park outside my house and it's free to park wherever you want. So had it not been for my friend moving his motorbike, I wouldn't even know they'd brought it in. And that's just a good example of how little consultation or information that we get.
So obviously, Save London Motorcycle have made a bold move to actually take this to court, haven't they? They're trying to raise funds for a legal case. Have you looked into what exactly the grounds are for the legal case?
It comes back to the consultation. In March 2023, the council published a draft TMO, and it received over 650 detailed objections, which is incredible because most consultations receive next to nothing. And each one of those objections had to be considered, their pros and the cons, and addressed from the statutory consultation. And then laughably, the council published that they'd looked through all of the 650 objections and all of the specific ideas that they were duty bound to consider, and said they were all rubbish and none of them were good ideas, and they were going to do what they were going to do anyway, which is the first grounds for objection, because legally the council have a duty to kind of address the concerns that concerned residents have put forward, and so that's the first grounds, I think, for objection. There's another one, which is that the council, I think it goes back to the 80s, they've got a legislation that forces them to consider parking. They have to provide adequate parking, and I'm aware that in this day and age you have to offset that against emissions and the environment and so on, and other policies. But again, it comes back to motorbikes are the answer. And they haven't done enough to consider their obligations as providing parking. They've also, as I say, it goes back to the consultation, over 650 suggestions. Have made no effort to consider the effect of motorcycling as a good or a bad thing. They've come at it as motorbikes are cars and they produce emissions, and I think their response has been bikes produce emissions and therefore we don't need to justify it any further. And crucially, and it's a slightly minority point, but blue badge holders have a problem. I know MAG have been involved with when you have to put a parking ticket on your bike and someone nicks it, or you can't put it on, it gets washed away in the rain or whatever. And it's the same for blue badge holders, is that if they have a blue badge, obviously people smash windows on cars and nick blue badges, so they make locks to fasten them onto steering wheels, but they're not suitable for use on motorbikes. And Hackney Council have turned around and said, well, it's not really our problem, it's a national level thing. Just because there isn't a sort of database of blue badge holders, it's up to people who are blue badge holders to find some way of fastening their blue badge onto their bike, which is just shrugging your shoulders and walking off as far as I'm concerned.
Speaking to Save London Motorcycling, they seem to be pretty confident in terms of the chances of a favourable outcome in the courts. Have you heard anything in terms of what we expect the defence to be from the council? Have they got any good excuses for this?
I think their response to those points I made was that the price of parking is not a factor limiting its availability. So, as I say, if you produce a car parking space, the fact that it's super expensive is neither here nor there. So that's their defence against the first one. Their defence against the second one I touched on as well, which is that motorcycles have CO2 emissions, so they don't need to comment any further. And the blue badge issue is, well, if only there was a database, we wouldn't have to worry about it, but there isn't, so sort it out, lads, it's not our problem. So I think Save London Motorcycling have said that their barrister has advised they've got a reasonably good chance of winning. I think one of the as a biker, I just want to stand up and scream and say, just if everyone got on bikes, the world would be so much better and you wouldn't have to do any of this stuff. But in the courts, I think one of the things that would be taken most seriously is a blue badge issue, because you can't just sweep people under the carpet and say, well, it's not our problem. So that's the barrister thinks that's one of the best ways. But all of them are very good points, and all of them stand a good chance of winning. And ultimately, they're fighting because it's worth it. You know, we have to stand up for our rights. You can't take your rights as a rider for granted anymore. I mean, that comes through loud and clear on the pages of Open Road. Thank goodness we've got people campaigning for us, because I haven't got the energy or the skill and knowledge to do it myself, or money. And so I gladly pay my 30 odd quid to MAG and get involved with Save London Motorcycling on the grounds that someone is fighting for our rights, because if we don't, we'll be equated as cars and priced off the roads, and we won't be riding bikes in 10 years.
Yeah, that's it, and I think it's important to recognise the fact that although this is a legal case that is being taken against Hackney Council, the implications of a successful outcome here won't just apply to Hackney. It is something that it will make all local authorities who are looking at introducing parking charges for motorcycles specifically think twice about how they go about doing it, about the consultation process they go through, the transparency that's involved, and considering basically the facts. Councils very often just view the motorcycle as another motorised transport that they can give a blanket policy to. So I think it's quite important for people to realise that yes, this isn't about donating money on a crowdfunder for the benefit of a few hundred motorcyclists in Hackney. This is about actually getting a better result for everybody around the entire country. Is there anything else that you wanted to say just to finish off and sort of like rally support for you and your Vespa?
I very much would, yeah. Just to reiterate what you said, I mean, you know, the old saying, tolerate this and you'll be next, comes to mind. And it was like this with congestion charging. London rolled it out, and all the other boroughs, not boroughs, but big cities around Britain got congestion charging the same. I've got a friend who is a keen biker, lives out in Worcestershire, and when I talk about this, he shrugs his shoulders and said, well, you're an idiot for living in London. But I think I would reiterate what you're saying, which is that, come on, people who live outside of London, you know, throw away your blinkers, because it's a small amount of money to contribute through the whole country is something you should be getting involved with, because when Hackney and Camden and Islington roll it out, your city will be next. So get involved and stop it, because it's coming your way. Motorcycles are equated to cars in the road planners and traffic planners throughout the whole country. And when you get a concerted and organised protest like this, it will force councils around the country to start considering motorbikes as motorbikes, not cars. So I think the knock-on effect, if we can win this, is not about parking, and it's not about parking in London, it's not about parking nationally, it's about impacting potentially all policy nationwide as bikes versus cars. And I think that's crucial to our right to ride a bike.
Okay, well that's great. Well, thank you very much for your time, Ben, and hopefully we'll be doing a follow-up video celebrating a successful turnover of the ridiculous parking charges that they want to introduce or have introduced now in Hackney.
Well, fingers crossed that they start to think about logic instead of just what they decided 5 years ago. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben.
Great, good to speak to you.
There's no justice in this world.